On June 20th, 1987, New Zealand took on France in the very first Rugby World Cup held in New Zealand, where they defeated France 29-9 to win the very first Rugby World Cup. Here's the story behind how the World Cup started and this first match today on Daily Sports History.
This episode is brought to you by Our Weird World. Every week, I, John Henson, dive into weird, crazy, and forgotten stories from the history books that you have probably never heard before. I try to put some humor into it, or maybe I just come off sounding like a dick. That's really up for you to decide. But join me every Monday. Subscribe everywhere that you get your podcasts.
I'm Ethan Reese, your guide to a rapid deep dive into sports history every day. And today's trivia question to listen out for is, how many teams participated in the very first World Cup? Now, rugby has been around since the 1800s and was a very popular sport throughout the 1900s and started to catch steam in the 1980s and 1990s. But up until 1987, there was no global union like soccer does in FIFA for the World Cup, which we talked about in a previous episode, which started way back in 1904. Now, there was a governing body known as the International Rugby Football Board that started in 1886, which featured Scotland, Wales, Ireland, and England, with England joining in 1890, and they continued to add members as they went. But this wasn't a global thing, as it was mainly just an organization that made the rules, but they didn't put on rugby events. But it continued to grow throughout the years, and now it has over 113 members. But there were other tournaments that were very popular, such as the Six National Championships, which was a European championship that featured England, France, Ireland, Italy, Scotland, and Wales. And it's one of the oldest tournaments in all of sports. And also, rugby got featured in the Paris Olympics in 1900 and was featured at the London Olympics, the 1908, 1920, and 1924 Olympics. But sadly, it has not been featured in the Olympics since 1924. And many times, the IRFB tried to discuss a possible World Cup as they saw the success of the Soccer World Cup. But there was always opposition, and they could never get a consensus on where to hold it, when to hold it, and put the whole tournament together. They had countries propose options in 1983, 1984, and in 1985. And in 1985, they actually got the votes they needed to pass the proposal 10-6 for all the 16 countries involved in the union. And they had a unique situation where the host of this World Cup would actually be two countries in Australia and New Zealand, as they are somewhat near each other in the Pacific Ocean, and it lessened the burden on each country to host. And for this very first World Cup, they did not need to have a qualifying, as they just invited teams that wanted to play. And there were 16 available spots, and 7 of them were filled by the 7 members of the International Rugby Football Board, which included Australia, France, New Zealand, Ireland, Scotland, England, and Wales. Now, South Africa was a part of this, but due to apartheid policies at the time, they were excluded as they were boycotting sports. And then they invited other nations who had quality rugby programs. And those other nations were Zimbabwe, Argentina, Canada, United States, Japan, Italy, Romania, Fiji, Tonga, and they did extend an invite to the Soviet Union, but they declined. So they decided this, and they had it all set to take place in 1987 between the dates of May 22nd to June 20th, when they would hold their championship. And it would be a pool stage match style, where each of them are divided into groups, and the winners of those groups go on to the second part of the tournament. They would hold 21 matches in New Zealand and have 11 matches held in Australia. So the first pool included Australia, England, Japan, and the United States, where Australia and England would come out of this pool. The second pool was Canada, Ireland, Tonga, and Wales, where five matches were held in New Zealand with one in Australia, and this was won by Wales and Ireland. The third pool was New Zealand, Fiji, Italy, and Argentina, won by New Zealand and Fiji, and this would be held in New Zealand. And the fourth and final pool was France, Scotland, Romania, and Zimbabwe, won by France and Scotland. And this was held in New Zealand as well. And if you notice, the 7 union countries were very dominant and they all advanced to the next round. So then after pool play, they went to a knockout stage, which is similar to the playoffs that we have in America, like the NFL. One game, winner take all, move on to the next round. And they were seeded by how many points they got in their pool play. And the winners of the first round were New Zealand, Wales, France, and Australia. So they took place in the semifinal round, where New Zealand absolutely dominated Wales, winning 49-6, and headed into the World Cup final, where France had a hard-fought battle against Australia, winning 30-24, and headed on to take New Zealand. Now, they did hold a third-place game where Wales faced off against Australia, and it was a close game where Wales won by just 1 point, 22-21. Which was held 2 days before the championship. And a quick explanation of the points for rugby. A try is worth 5 points and is when the ball is scored crossing the goal line on the ground. And a penalty try is when he would have scored on a try, but there was a foul on the play, and that's worth 7 points. A penalty is awarded when a team chose to kick, is when there was infringement by the opponent and the team chose to kick a goal after that. And conversion is after the try, the team would take to add 2 further points by kicking the ball over the crossbar between the 2 posts. And that is worth 2 points. A drop goal is worth 3 points, and that is when a player kicks the ball for a goal in open play. So the final match was held in Eden Park in New Zealand, which was a home matchup for New Zealand, which gave them, and it was broadcast by both ABC, which is the Australian broadcast system, not the one we have in America, and the United Kingdom's BBC. But coming out, it looked like France had given all they could in their semi-final bout against Australia, as they looked very lackluster, and New Zealand quickly took the lead, playing mainly a kicking game as they scored a drop goal with 14 minutes into the game, and then they got a try just 3 minutes later, giving them a 9-0 lead at the half. Now, the second half, France comes out and tries to fight their way back, getting a penalty 4 minutes into the half, finally putting them on the board. And France fought back, but this was just a little bit too late. And after this, New Zealand took off as they got 2 tries and took their lead to 29-3, which was just too much to come back from. And they ended with a final score of 29-9 in front of mostly home fans of 48,000 spectators. Now, France would go on to be in the finals in 1999 and 2011, but they have not won a World Cup just yet. And New Zealand would not win a World Cup again until 2011, and they would win again in 2015, which until 2023 was the most that any country had won, until South Africa passed them, winning the 2023 World Cup, giving them 4 World Cup wins. Thank you for listening to today's Daily Sports History. It means a lot to me that you did this. Please, if you could, share about us on your social media. Share us with a friend. Let everyone know about all the sports you're learning and the history behind it. And come back tomorrow for more Daily Sports History. And did you catch the answer to today's trivia question? How many teams were in the very first World Cup? The answer is 16. And the last World Cup in 2023 had 20 nations and 34 attempted to qualify.